Thunder Grunt.
Hey guys,
Bob.
Hey, Bob.
I want you to introduce yourselves.
I am Jimmy George. I am a full-time script consultant and screenwriter.
I am Jamie the Jet Nash, screenwriter. No, that's my wrestling gimmick. I'm Jamie Nash, screenwriter.
Dude, Jamie the Jet. I
Jamie
love
the
it.
Jet.
Dude, how can you make a nickname that goes along with your juggling ability?
Jamie the Juggler.
Go ahead,
Jamie
Bob.
Jugs.
Well,
Who are you, Bob?
I'm Bob Rose. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm the Bryce Dallas Howard of this podcast.
yes.
Nice.
Which is an inside joke that no one listening will get. Anyway,
Curse
much
you.
to the opposite end of the entertainment spectrum of Bryce Dallas Howard, today we're going to talk about Predator,
Yes.
1987. Classic masterpiece. You're not going to find me saying anything negative because I'd cry if I did.
Love it.
I'm going to say it's just my opinion on this movie is probably going to be 100% biased because I love it too much.
I love it too. That's why we're talking about it.
But Jamie, first, can you enlighten us as to how much the world loves it or loved it
Yes, I
with
can.
the box office?
Yes, I can. Predator made $98 million. Not quite 100.
87.
Not quite 100 million.
But that's 87. Yeah, it's
yeah.
87.
No, if you got
so-
to 100 million, you were in the top probably 5 or 2 or 3. I'd almost be. I didn't look this up, but I'd almost be tempted to see where it fit in the top 10 of 1987.
On 1987.
It has to be in the top 10 easily, right?
Oh my gosh.
I'll check it out. But its production budget interested me too. How much do you think this production budget was? I'm gonna.
If I just guess,
Yeah.
60 million?
Okay.
30.
15 million.
Fuck!
Isn't that amazing?
Holy
that stood
shit.
out to me. But I guess,
I guess
movies
with the
were
sets,
just cheaper.
there's not sets,
But
right?
still,
Right, just show up.
you figured Arnold got a payday for this movie?
Yeah.
It was his first payday movie, probably in some ways. The rest of them were kind of like he was an up and
He was
comer.
already a movie star.
But this
by
was the
point.
payday.
Yeah.
This is like we need Arnold. So
Yeah, I watched the trailer after I watched the movie on the DVD, and it was just Arnold. The whole trailer. It's like they didn't even show the Predator at all. It's just like Arnold Schwarzenegger will have to become more than a man.
What they can't show. Think about it though. They couldn't show the Predator.
Yeah, no, I know.
I mean, that would
know.
ruin the whole.
Yeah.
You know.
You would have to become more than a man.
Right.
in some ways, I'm surprised they didn't show the Predator though. But
Yeah.
I guess they couldn't.
Well, remember the production development. I mean, let's talk about that for a second.
Oh,
Like-
I
Oh,
understand. They literally couldn't.
They literally couldn't show because they didn't know what it looked like yet, and also there was the thing with Van Damme who was in the lobster costume,
Yeah, that whole thing.
which they ended up not using.
But by the way, total where it fits in the blockbuster scale here on 1987, pretty far down. The 98 million, I should say, was worldwide, so it made a lot of money internationally, which is kind of weird for movies back then,
Yeah.
like we've talked about.
Right.
But it made almost half its money internationally at
Wow.
the time.
I think that's something we can talk about a little later
Yeah,
Yep.
because actually might have to do with the content.
that's true.
True enough.
Yeah.
It finished 12th behind Dirty Dancing.
Oh, well, that was
Love
a
it.
big one
No.
for the year.
Well, Dirty Dancing deserves it.
So, number one in
Nobody puts Baby in a
1987.
corner.
I bet you would never guess what number one in 1987 was.
I feel like I could guess it if I
would.
really thought.
Bob might be able to because he has a
No idea.
odd sense for these things.
I'd,
I'm not the. This is welcome to movie trivia.
yeah, right. No, go ahead. I don't want to waste dead time.
Okay, think. 3 men and a baby.
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That's three actors at the height of their career.
Gutenberg, Selig.
Yeah, the Goot, man.
1987, 3 Men and a Baby, Fatal Attraction, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Good Morning Vietnam, and Moonstruck.
Oh,
Comedy dominating.
man, I love
Killing it,
Moonstruck.
1987.
Gonna have a tear running down my face.
Yeah.
I miss it. I miss comedy being in the theater.
Yeah, man.
Anyway, that aside,
Predator.
Let's talk about Predator now that we know the business. Who wrote it?
It was these dudes named the Thomas Brothers. Jim and Jane. Now I'm forgetting what the second
It's
guy.
another
I know
J.
it's Jim and John or Jim and Jane.
J.J. Thomas Brothers.
I think I'd look this up, but I didn't. They made other movies. This was their first. It was written on spec, and it was called The Hunter originally.
Okay.
Apparently,
Not the Benicio del Toro movie.
yeah, they got
The Hunted. Sorry.
the way this one came about. I think the pitch was, Rocky. They had seen Rocky 4, and they were like, "Who's Rocky gonna fight next?" And it was actually an alien. That's how they got the idea for this movie.
great.
That was their
That's-
concept.
Incredible!
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
So that's the genesis of Predator. Is they wanted to do Rocky 5 with an alien, so they were going to send. Now it makes all that sense that Apollo Creed's in the movie.
Yeah, that totally
Right.
makes sense.
So they wrote the
Apollo
Hunter.
Creed gets killed by
Yeah,
both
exactly.
things. Right, yeah. That's so good.
They wrote the Hunter. They sold it on spec. I think there's some mythology around it, like they slipped it under somebody's door or something like that. And that's how the movie came to be.
What else did they do?
So after that, they became pretty hot in the action world. They did
Yeah.
things like, let's see, I'm skimming through.
Jamie's our historian because he has a laptop.
Yeah.
That's it's all on him. 'cause
Mr.
of that.
IMDb. They did this is bizarre. They have a story credit on Wild Wild West, which is a remake. So how
That's
anyway.
weird.
What?
They did Executive Decision.
Oh, I can see that.
I actually
Yeah.
like exactly.
I like it too.
They did Mission to Mars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Behind Enemy Lines.
Okay.
This is a podcast right here where somebody just says titles and everyone just reacts with sounds.
Yeah.
The review is a sound.
Wait, is Behind Enemy Lines the one where the villain is just a guy who doesn't say anything and wears Adidas pants?
No,
I think
that
it's
is
the
not.
one
That's
with,
the Gene Hackman and Owen Wilson.
Yes, that's.
Is that it? Is
Yeah,
that the okay?
That's what Behind
That's the
Enemy
movie,
Lines.
yeah.
That's what
That's-
Behind
that's the
Enemy
movie?
Lines.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a minute. Then
Okay, so anyway, that's pretty much so Predator, I think, was the big
That was
one.
their movie. Okay.
They probably got a lot of script doctor work and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
well, let's not forget that Shane Black was actually on set and he did a little bit of that. Script
a
doctor.
little
That's
bit
that's
of
right.
that.
Though
I mean, that's part of development.
in his interviews, he said that that's the reason they hired him, because they wanted this like just in case guy on set.
How about
But
that?
he said nothing he did really got in the
No,
movie,
nothing
except,
on
Okay.
except
The dirty jokes?
The dirty jokes.
Yeah.
I think he improvised.
So he was like, I need my character to have something memorable. Well, that's good.
Yeah. He said, and I remember reading an interview with him a while back where he said that this script was one of those scripts that went through the typical circle of rewrites, but then they went back to the original script by the end. Like it went through this whole circle, and then they were like, "Yeah, just stick with the original."
Oh,
or
interesting.
something. Yeah,
So this
It was good to begin
So
with.
this
at least
is-
from his mouth.
this is pretty much it. Ended up being the Thomas Brothers spec.
Similar to it.
Okay.
Similar to it.
Yeah,
At least from
Did they rewrite
Shane
it back
Black's
to the spec, or do they
interview.
just go back to the spec? You know what I mean?
Sometimes they kind of go back to the spec. They're like, "Oh, we did all this weird stuff. We, complicated it. We hung all these ornaments. Why did we like this thing? Let's go back to the first one." It happens. It happens.
Okay. Well, what's the log line,
Let's
guys?
break this down, Jamie.
Because I know
Yeah.
you guys.
Bob.
Yeah, and instead of knowing what the log line, we thought let's go through and kind of figure out, what makes a log line. Talk about log lines and
Yeah.
I think
stories.
that would help. Yeah.
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 So we didn't write a log line. We're just going to kind of gen this up on the fly through our minds. Anyway.
Let's talk about the recipe. I really like. I used your exact words and quoted you to clients before when talking about logline. You did
Okay.
a great.
Thanks for
blog
that kickback.
post.
I got the check.
Yeah. You did a great blog post once, and you broke down your theory of log lines. You want to talk
Which
about
I-
the recipe?
I'm sure I ripped off from somebody.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can remember. But
We
basically,
steal.
what I say you need in a log line, you need a hero with a compelling goal, a huge obstacle, and life or death stakes. Okay. And life or death can mean different things to different people.
Mhm.
In a romantic comedy, it's different than in Predator.
Yeah.
And even Predator is different than what it would be if it was Avengers Infinity War.
Right.
Life or death could be
It can be the
galactic,
whole-
universal.
It can be the whole Earth exploding. It could be you dying, or it could be, do I get that promotion?
Exactly.
Right.
It could be anything. It could be
Right.
anything like that. So this movie just has such a pure log line that I
it's-
figured it would be an easy one. And then we'll go into the little bits and pieces of it too. So here are some of my tips as far as creating log lines. And when I'm saying creating log lines, I think you should do this before you write the script.
Agreed.
And these tips are more about before you write the script. There's all kinds of tips you could have for a good marketing log line and a little sizzle and it's that's a little bit of an art.
Yeah.
Less math. This is more like before I write a script, I need these elements in place.
The construction.
Yeah. So one thing with the hero that I usually talk about, there's this term called, and the term's kind of big. Tensity is kind of the term. Attention in the hero. So the example I think we've talked about on the show is something like farm boy hero for Luke Skywalker is good, or how would you describe Yoda? A
wise warrior.
Well,
old sage,
yeah, something like that.
That's sage,
or kind of like giving his slight goofiness and stuff. There's a tension there between Sage and his personality.
Goofy Sage.
Yeah. And then a character without that kind of tensity, and I didn't make this up, I've seen other people talk about it in the Star Wars universe, is Jar Jar, because Jar Jar's just an idiot. Like he's not an idiot hero. He's not, idiot genius or something.
Well, he's kind of a hero at the end of the movie.
Maybe. Kind of. I don't know. I think that's,
I don't want to argue for Jar Jar.
That's sort of what you want, but you need that tension in the hero. Interestingly enough, in Predator, I'm not sure what that tension would be, but I usually strive for that, because sometimes you have these kind of, and that's what makes these kind of movies unique with the action hero. Is is just that thing, and this movie's kind of unique in that you want him to almost be the perfect hero, the unkillable, the best thing on earth. He's Rocky IV.
Like the gun is an extension of him.
Exactly.
He's a machine of destruction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's a tip that I usually say, try to find that tension. I'm not sure if there's one in this case. He's kind of like an unkillable mercenary or something.
Yeah. What do you think about putting, speaking of the tensity, do you think that it could also be, I'm asking, I'm not like stating what do you think about putting your character's flaw in the log line?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's a lot of times what
a lot
it
of
is.
times. With this, I don't think it works.
Drug addicted cop or something.
Right. It kind of shows you their inner problem right in the sentence.
So like if it was Die Hard, you would say a hard-bitten cop from a broken family.
Exactly.
Is that like that?
Yeah. Okay. Exactly.
Even
well, what would Dutch be then? Because Dutch.
No, it doesn't work for this, but it doesn't need to work.
It doesn't need to.
I would say, if I had to stretch it, there's probably something about his honor code, like he's a honorable killer or something. I don't know. You'd probably be able to, some kind of solder.
It depends on your politics if that
soldier
works.
with a heart.
Yeah, I think you could. I think you could
mercenary with a heart.
Even though Arnold is the selling point, you could almost just say a special forces rescue.
Right.
You guys are trying to write a log line for something that had the celebrity in the log line originally.
Yeah. No,
you know what I mean?
I like it. I'm just saying, for people listening.
The celebrity worked into it so hard.
Rocky, on the other hand, if you did Rocky 1, he definitely has tensity in the character.
Definitely.
Yes,
he's a guy that he doesn't belong in a championship fight. Right. So
you probably could say something about his intelligence.
That's
I don't know how to word it right now, but
that's just wrong, bro.
Well, no, but that's the point. Rocky's not that smart. Yeah,
down on his luck.
A doofus boxer. Okay,
lovable oaf boxer.
So you got the character.
That's the hero.
You start out with the character.
So
the hero.
The next one, the goal, and I'd say in this one, it's as simple as once the real movie gets started, and that's the key. Like once the conflict is in place, it really becomes a survival
goal. Right. Yeah.
So I think the goal is survival.
Yeah.
The key with goals that we've talked about before, and I can't stress this enough because this is where people fall along the wayside, is to try to make the goal something you could take a picture of, which is what Jimmy likes to say.
Filmable.
It's a filmable event.
Visual.
So
you mean it shouldn't just happen all in the character's head, Jimmy?
Yeah. And a lot of times
in a book, yes.
What's my character's goal? I ask this all the time to a lot of clients who are trying to improve their skills, and you ask what's the goal, because you read the script and it's not clear, and you say, well, happiness, yeah,
and that's
okay.
So, that's tough to take a picture of. No, the real thing is, it's really just, in my opinion, a question of process. Like people get to happiness and think they're done, but they need to personify what that person would think, or I don't know.
Yeah, you make
personify is the right
happiness
word.
visual,
Well,
and
you
it's
have to
not a
make it
smile.
real.
It's an event. It's a goal achieved.
In Predator, the filmable goal is survival.
Survival, which is so film. It's
That's-
you know,
I mean,
That's
that's
he's
it.
still alive at
He's
the
still
end.
alive. We
Yeah.
filmed it. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Right.
some people might go into it thinking that the goal of Arnold is happiness or success or you
Right.
know, promote,
Dutch's
you know,
goal is fulfillment.
fulfillment. Yeah.
Well,
And
of
you have
his,
to
of his
figure out what
orders
that
too.
means.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
And-
no,
and
and there
also
are
to-
many goals.
The safety of his men. Yeah.
Oh, there's
yeah. There's-
within this movie.
Well, this is
there's
for
a
a
ton
log-
of smaller
but you're
goals,
talking
but the
for a log
overall
line.
goal
Yeah.
and a log line is just the overall
happiness part, that unfilmable part, that can inform the character. That can be their
Absolutely.
need.
goal. Absolutely.
But you still need that goal when you're coming up with your story.
yeah,
So-
especially in the log line, it needs to be the filmable goal that you describe.
Right.
Right.
So then the obstacle has to be some, you know, just huge problem. It has to be almost
the
yeah.
primary
just to
force of
reiterate, to keep us
antagonism.
centered here,
Sure.
because I don't know if we've ever done this on this
We
podcast.
haven't.
So far, it would be like a legendary mercenary
Right.
is in the fight of his life for survival against,
Yep.
and then we
Exactly.
say
Yeah.
whatever the.
And
I'm kind of
Alien.
I'm
Yeah.
bringing it up to whatever you're about to say.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and because this hero is so great, then the villain has to be so great,
Right.
You know, and
Greater, really.
in you know, a hunter or something like that.
Right.
Is this alien hunter? It has to be so great that you know,
Insurmountable.
insurmountable obstacle, and then the stakes are obviously life or death.
Yeah,
in
this one's
case.
easy with the stakes.
This-
'Cause survival.
This movie is a perfect example to me of a thing that Jimmy has definitely talked about: is put your characters through hell.
Yeah.
Yep.
Make it harder.
Yeah, like
As
this.
hard as
You're
possible.
This is
the
the most
angry
primal
god.
example of like a blockbuster doing that to a character.
Yeah.
You know,
Over and over.
Yeah.
Watch your friends die. Get beat up by an alien.
he's thrown. He
Yeah.
even says it himself: "We're thrown into the meat grinder," and he's got to
Yeah.
come out
Yeah.
one piece.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Um,
and I think that's what. So a logline has all those elements
Yeah.
that you could tell your logline to somebody else, and they would be able to tell you back all those things. You could say, "Who's the hero? Who's the goal? Who's the?"
Yep.
And if they didn't know, then you probably need to keep working.
You
on your
shouldn't
logline.
start until you can hash this out. You
Yeah.
know, until you can sit someone in a room who doesn't even know you, and
Yeah.
you just tell them this sentence of what it is,
So
and it's
give me
clear.
the sentence. Let
Well,
me hear it from one of you
and
guys.
the other
I
thi-
want to hear it from the professionals.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
yeah, and this is kind of hard because again we're doing this on the fly.
I know.
Yeah.
But the other thing I would also say is it can't be so ambiguous that you say something like a mercenary goes up against an unstoppable force
Yeah.
in the battle of his life. You have to keep the cool part in it. you know?
Intergalactic alien hunter.
Yeah, and that's
Right, yeah.
that's the part where it's a little hard to do on the fly.
Yeah, and you should put the setting in there
In the
too.
setting.
The
So
setting
it's like
helps.
In the
yeah.
jungles of
in the
Yeah.
jungles
Well-
of Cambodia,
While leading his team on a covert mission to South America.
South America.
An unlikable or an unlikely mercenary or something. I don't know. Unkillable mercenary, we could say. Discovers
Or-
his squad.
You can maybe talk about
Is-
how he was deceived, but that might be
Deceived,
that
yeah,
might be a
something.
spoiler.
So, yeah, something like
That's a
that.
spoiler.
It might be a
Yeah.
little too much for the log line, and there's lots of theories on log lines. There's lots of different perspectives on this. I like Jamie's perspective to keep it simple, but you have the Blake Snyder method, which the Blake Snyder method
He tries to do the
is the
midpoint and
entire
everything.
structure
which-
of the movie in a
I've
single
seen
sentence.
that. It seems kind of ridiculous.
It almost reads like a synopsis.
It's good
in
for
a sentence.
for the process. Like
Absolutely
if you want to start.
for constructing the story.
That sounds like a
yes.
bad trailer, though.
Yeah.
A trailer that gives away the whole movie. I don't want that.
It's
Yeah.
kind of that's
But
what I mean.
when
Like it's good for
it's
your
got the
own
midpoint.
self.
For yourself,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
an exercise, not a marketing.
And then you have the
thing,
TV
right?
guide one, which is even more vague. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it gives you almost nothing.
Man.
Arnold Schwarzenegger versus an alien in the jungle.
yeah,
Man vs. Beast. Tonight at 7. Yeah, right.
I would say the log line goes something like that though. It's like, you know, while leading his team on a mission to South America, a unkillable hero finds that they're being picked off one by one by an alien hunter, you know, and now they're the game and they must survive, or you know,
Yeah.
it's something
Yeah.
along those lines.
Must
The
become
hunter, the
more
hunter
than a
becomes
man.
the
Becomes a hunter.
hunted.
A
Yeah,
lot of times
right.
you do see those
Becomes-
cliches.
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
put
Almost
into
like
the
right out of the trailer.
little-
Must
little
become more than a man in order to survive.
But
Right.
But that lays everything out simply. It tells you the cool part, an alien hunter.
Yeah.
I think that's the cool part
Yeah.
of this. And everything's set up. Then you're ready to level up and write the script.
you got to be able to see the premise delivery possibilities in the log line.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mercenary, jungle, alien. There's your premise.
That's the Predator log line.
Something like that.
Okay.
Something like that.
Well, now that we got that down,
Yeah.
I think that's good. No, I think that's defined.
Okay.
For you guys, I kind of let you guys hash that out because I'm over here just listening. Let's talk about the movie, though. Now that we're past the log
well, that's
line.
the construction.
That
of
is the movie. That's the movie.
Yeah,
It is.
that's the
those
movie.
guys did that.
I think the other part that you'd pick when you're doing the log line maybe is the genre.
Yeah,
You'd want to know
that's what I was
that.
gonna say.
Yeah, genre.
Because this is a I would say sci-fi action and slasher horror
Yeah.
movie.
I-
It's dope.
Yeah,
I
there's
think-
a lot of dread.
I think the plot is pure horror. But
Like on paper, you mean?
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the beats. I mean, I think it has more in common with Halloween than it does Lethal Weapon. You know,
Easily.
you know,
Easily,
or
yeah.
even Die Hard.
I always
for
go
that
back to the
extent.
intent, and if you watch the movie, it is intended to terrify you. They are all terrified at every turn, even from the first appearance of the bodies when they're stripped and they don't know it's a supernatural force. They are terrified. Who did this? And you can see in their eyes that they think that this could happen to them, and it's
Right.
constantly.
Though I would argue that while they're terrified, we're not necessarily terrified
That's
watching
true.
this movie.
That's
So that's
true.
why I don't think it's necessarily like a
That's
horror
true.
movie.
You're saying
You know what's interesting?
that's interesting. Good call.
Why is that though? Because
I was wondering that myself.
the one criticism I saw this movie recently, which I'll give it to Honest Trailers. They did Honest Trailers for Predator because the new movie came out.
Okay.
And the one criticism they kind of really had, because it's always a place to love with those guys,
Mhm.
but it was showing that it was an alien right at the beginning.
Right.
Gotcha.
Like it's a different movie if that one shot of the spaceship isn't in there.
Okay.
Like the fact that they show it's a spaceship, it's an alien. There you go.
right, there's no
What if-
arguing. We've seen the.
We know it's
spaceship.
a spaceship, but what if that shot wasn't in there? Then how would that change it for the
No,
audience? You know.
Interesting.
I think there's a couple reasons for that. I think this movie has a bit of a slow burn to get because you have to go through the
It
whole.
does.
Let's save the the diplomats or whatever they are.
The hostages.
It's a
Yeah,
war.
the
It's
hostage-
like
It's
a
a
war
hostage
movie
movie,
first,
yeah.
and then it's hostage.
and
Yeah,
then there's
it's Rambo first.
Yeah.
It's what if it's more Rambo with an alien.
So
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this movie is a bit of a
Exactly.
this movie is more cheeseburger than sushi. You know,
Yeah.
I think that it would be hard for the common movie watcher to be like, oh, I'm watching an action movie. Oh crap, it's a horror movie. You know, I think that left turn would be a little hard.
It would be From Dusk Till Dawn,
It-
where
yeah.
you get half the audience to be
Yeah.
like, "Fuck this,"
Right.
and then
Yeah.
half the audience to be like, "This is great," you know,
Right,
like all of a sudden.
exactly.
I think
Yeah.
that's an excellent point. They didn't want to make Dusk Till Dawn. They wanted to tell you right away, hey, just stay with us.
There's an alien coming.
We're gonna put this thing in there. You kind of know what it is. We're gonna let you in on that.
You're not going to see it. We're not going to tease you with it until things get.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
But
right.
it's there.
Okay.
It's the monster in the house that makes no noise. How's that?
Yeah.
Ah.
And I'll tell you another reason why it's the monster in the quiet house.
In the quiet house, the quiet place monster.
I'll tell you another reason why I think this movie isn't as scary because you got Arnold in it. I mean, he's
Yeah.
capable of, he's a monster.
Yeah.
This monster doesn't know who he's messing with. He's messing
Yeah.
with Arnold and a team of guys who have seen the worst stuff they could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
This isn't Heather Langenkamp or
Yeah.
whatever. She hasn't seen any of this stuff. This is what's his name? Dutch.
Dutch,
Yeah,
yeah,
Dutch.
Yeah.
Battle
Does
tested.
he have a last name?
Warriors.
That's his
um,
last name.
Double
Dutch Battle Tested Warrior.
So I think that's another reason why it's not scary.
You're saying there's not vulnerability to the characters.
I saw a great description.
That's a good
of
call.
Why Predator is great. From it was just a YouTube thread, and they were talking about like how this movie would still be great if it was from the Predator's perspective, because he didn't know that he was going up against basically
That's a
Arnold
good
Schwarzenegger, like our best man. He didn't know he was going up on Earth's
Yeah.
best man. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like imagine if you made a movie about a hunter and then you found out there was like a killer deer in the woods and it
Yeah.
And the deer starts
Deer
fucking
attack.
with him and taking him down.
Great.
Right? Yeah. Like it works both ways
Yeah.
if it was filmed differently.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
yeah and I think that goes back to the Rocky versus Alien
Alien.
in that
How it was dreamed up.
it's really a matchup movie.
Yeah.
It's ultimately trying to get to a matchup between these
Yeah.
two unkillable forces.
And it does so masterfully.
And even though that's the intent, though, it doesn't feel like forced
Not at all.
to get there. You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like I don't feel like Predator is written in a way that makes it seem like, well, this is all just
This is
about
just-
the two of them. It's
Yeah.
not. I feel like all
yeah.
right. Yeah. I feel like the rest of the cast that fills this out all have structure and art and moments and reasons.
It takes a long time to get to the matchup.
Yeah.
I mean, Arnold's really a final girl. I know there is a final girl in this too.
Yeah.
But he's really the final girl of this movie.
Of this horror
He's,
movie.
they all get picked off one by one, just like they would in a slasher movie.
Yeah.
And then it finally comes time when the hero has to fight back.
He's just the final
And take
girl
one.
that socially would. He's not playing against the type of a hero because he is literally
He is
the type of hero, right?
That's right.
The ultimate action hero versus
He's as close to a superhero as you could get.
as you can get without being super,
Yeah.
right?
And even in this movie, it does have like the typical monster now, Sin, I guess. I guess Carl Weathers' character kind of is the Sin.
He
in
plays
some
this.
ways. I
The
think
deception is
the
the sin.
deception.
Yeah.
That's what got him here. That's what's
Yeah.
going to get them all killed.
Yeah.
They would, and I guess there's some kind of Reagan era message about getting involved with the Contras or something,
Yeah.
of the deception of the government and things like that.
Yeah. That's a good
It
call.
was just kind of a government bad message.
Yeah.
Government bad method.
He kind of plays that.
We're disposable.
If I could, he probably kind of plays that Paul Reiser role from Aliens.
Absolutely. It's
right?
while I was watching it, I was
You're
feeling
thinking of
like,
Paul
I was like,
Reiser
this
from
is just
Aliens.
like Paul Reiser. He's
Yeah.
the company man.
Yeah,
It's
Perfect.
interesting though because Arnold,
You got us into this.
right.
It's the exact
Arnold-
same lines.
just to go back to the intensity thing, Arnold really doesn't have that much of that with him. But if you put Rambo has a ton of that in him. You
Yeah,
know,
definitely.
He feels kind of guilty and haunted by the past and things like that. But he's still
Dutch
doing the
isn't
mission.
tortured at all. It's almost as if Dutch would be tortured after the events we're
Yeah.
seeing. This is the event that tortures Dutch.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Up until now, he's actually lucked out.
Yeah.
How would this movie work if it was Rambo in it? Do you think you'd like it?
I think it would be.
I mean, no, I think for the reason we literally just said, like, to me, First Blood is not an action movie.
Yeah.
I love First
Yeah,
Blood, but it is
too.
not an action movie
I
to me.
agree.
It is a sad portrayal of, like, PTSD,
Yeah.
where I guess with where the Rambo movies went, it would make sense.
Yeah.
But if it was right after that, I'd be like, oh, it seems dirty.
Yeah.
I don't want to see him in, like, a fantastical movie.
Yeah.
You know what I
Well,
mean? It seems almost disrespectful.
I think the character exploration would be unnecessary and would take away.
I think
from
that
I think it would take away when Carl Weathers shook his hand in the beginning. I would be like, what is going on?
what is happening? Yeah. I don't think Rambo should be smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what
That's
I mean?
a good call.
Well,
Even at the worst of those movies, like he's
I think
always tortured.
I'd
and
have to
that's-
rewrite it that
Yeah.
they pulled him in to do this mission because they needed somebody that was outside of the world, and they lied to him and said, "You got to save your old colonels captured down
Yeah,
there."
yeah.
And then he went in. See, I'm rewriting this. This is my Rambo version of Predator.
Rambo
I just-
version.
right. And the only reason I don't like it is because of what the first movie is.
Yeah. Well-
It's the history of the franchise.
Well, it would really be jumping the shark to have Rambo fight the
An
Predator.
alien.
Almost in a way.
That's what this movie kind of is, though.
It
I
is.
guess.
It really is.
But McTiernan intentionally keeps that side of Dutch light. I mean, he's always light in this
Yeah.
movie. You know, he's only there for the mission. I don't feel like Dutch's past has ever really played in my mind watching this movie a billion
Right.
times.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think about. I just know that he knew Carl Weathers and he's a soldier.
Yeah.
I don't need anything else. He's not tortured.
No.
He just is this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just want it to be Rambo.
I know. I'm sorry.
Thanks a lot.
We can't change that.
What do you think though? I was struggling with this, much like I did in the last podcast.
For a movie we all love as much, we had a really hard time writing a.
the one thing,
outline.
the one thing, the log line. I think this movie's so simple that the log line is just super simple.
Yeah.
yeah.
Log lines are hard to write in your head, but I think all the elements are pretty obvious.
Yeah. Especially the stakes and the goal, survival.
The one thing I was debating, and Jimmy, you did a good job with this with Nightmare on Elm Street. I remember. So what? How about theme? I was struggling with that one with this one.
The theme of Predator. That is a good question.
Is there an arc? Is there
it's-
deeper?
It's-
Is he one of these?
I
I mean,
Arc almost like, okay, I'm
gonna throw out a word there. I've been saying though, primal. If there is a theme, it's probably almost on the level of like man versus nature, or man versus beast, or man versus himself type of thing.
There's some man versus nature there
Yeah.
thing big time, especially in the last in the last act.
Sure.
There's got to be. I
It's
didn't
like,
write
what
it
does it
down.
mean?
There's some honor there, honoring your respecting your enemies aspect, because
Sure.
the
predator doesn't respect him,
right, and that goes back to the village that they destroy, and then the girl, and then when it first starts they're disrespectful to her, but it turns out that she's aware of the monster and the people are aware, like she knows more than all of them. Like the twist with her, and then ultimately realizing that they should have been respecting her and using her knowledge, and that speaks to that. I mean, I didn't think about this going in, but like that sticks out to me, respecting your enemies.
Yeah.
And that's something that could compare to Man
honor's
versus
a
Nature
huge part
too.
of this movie.
Yeah.
But I think you're right about the respecting your enemies is somehow part of it or something.
Yeah. And that goes with Man versus Nature too, because in a way, nature is our enemy.
Man versus Nature is like that can be the beginning of something,
Yeah.
but then you have to say, well, what
what
is
he saying
versus
about
nature?
Man versus Nature?
And
the moral premise.
With this
Yeah,
one, the clues
that's true.
to the theme I saw were the sin. He's, what does it say about him lying, or Arnold saying we don't do that, the kind of mission and all that kind of stuff. What was Carl Weathers trying to do? What was his character trying to do in his mission that could be a moral signpost?
Yeah.
What is the Predator? What is the Predator's lesson? Because usually he's the ultimate version.
Carl Weathers is a question of morality versus duty.
Right.
Yeah.
Where I think that his story is saying morality is more important.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
I mean, that's what the moral of his story is. If he was more moral, he wouldn't have done that.
Right.
What do you
He
think?
wouldn't have listened to orders that were corrupt.
Right.
Yeah.
And deceived.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do you think
That's
is
good.
this? What do you think it would say about the theme that when he is capable of bashing the Predator's skull and he doesn't?
Right.
What is that?
Respect.
What does that mean?
It's respect.
Right.
No, the between the two of them, that the moral of respect is definitely there. I don't know exactly what it's saying at this moment.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever thought
I
about
haven't thought about it at all.
No.
I'm so glad you asked.
No, honestly, when I struggle with them, that's why I ask, because this one didn't seem. And I think sometimes writers don't care
They
about
don't
that. They're
care.
just organically
Yeah.
feeding into
We're
something.
doing the English instructor version.
Yeah, we're doing the English instructor version.
Well, this is what
I think ultimately.
J.D. Salinger
But I
said.
don't, like you're saying, the writer's not thinking about it. I don't think the characters are thinking about it in this instance. Like
Yeah.
Primal, they're
Yeah.
two beasts fighting it out with every tool they have in the.
I
in the
just think
arsenal.
whatever process that Thomas used to come up with this, they weren't using the controlling idea
No.
in a really on the nose sort of way.
No.
They might have had some ideas like
Yeah.
this is, about the characters and the Predator and things like that. I feel like I was trying to piece those ideas together myself for them more than they piece them together and just put them on a platter.
Yeah.
So I don't know that and that's fine. I mean, a lot of great
Doesn't
writers,
need to be.
a lot of great writers don't write with all that stuff in mind, but I'm always trying to see if it's there. That's why I asked the question. And then sometimes I'm just making BS up.
Well, can I bring up something that's kind of weird?
I love this though.
Like I watched this movie about a week ago, right? Just on my own. I didn't do it for the podcast. I just wanted to watch Predator. And it honestly, I think this movie actually kind of weirdly plays better now than it used to, because the theme that I see running through the whole
Birth
thing
of a Nation.
Yeah, no. But no, this movie is known for being this like silly machismo kind of display, whereas like, right. Yeah, it's like it's almost like this display of the extremity of toxic masculinity.
Exactly.
And the moment when he doesn't kill the Predator, it almost is the moment where you're like, well, the two of them are almost the same the whole time. In the end, you kind of look at them like he's a killer. They're just doing it on their own terms, and they're both from their own planet, and they're the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
So it's like when he does that, it's like, okay, well, now I can at least side with him because the Predator is honestly the bigger douchebag.
Yeah.
like cosmically speaking, he's the
he
bigger
loses
douchebag.
and he's just gonna hit his self-destruct button.
Yeah.
And he laughs at him
He
in the end.
laughs
He's
at-
just
yeah.
it's like he has not an ounce of not that he's human, but not an ounce of humanity in him.
Right.
There's no warmth in a Predator. There's
No.
only cold stone hard
Wait,
respect.
do you say the movie plays better now because of that?
I think it does.
Really?
Yeah, because it kind of. I mean, I don't know, because the whole
I could
the
see an
80s
argument for the opposite.
the 80s machismo
Yeah.
aspect of it is silly now, but I think the quarter of the movie is kind of giving it to the character who is the lesser of the two. The Predator is like, if you took everything about Jesse Ventura's character and amplified it on a cosmic level, you become a Predator.
Yeah.
The Predator is, I no doubt that their homeworld is
deeper than Alabama tick.
right. No, he's like a satire of masculinity, whereas the Predator is from a different world that is just that.
Yeah.
I mean that's just how I saw it a little bit from a modern.
I expected
take,
to feel what you said, Jamie. The opposite when I was revisiting, because it's been a while. I was expecting to be like, man, this machismo, hyper masculinity is gonna drive me nuts. Because it already drives me nuts, kind of in reality.
but it's self-aware.
But I actually thought that I didn't expect the warmth between the characters. Like, they did a good job with showing how much they care about each other, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of time spent in the little character moments showing the relationships between each other that made it not feel over the top.
The team reminded me a lot, the team building aspects of Aliens.
Yes.
You know, it was a good. I actually think I like this team better in this movie.
I
than
absolutely
I
like
like
the team better than
Me
the
too.
others,
But I like Aliens the movie better. But that's another matter.
Yeah, me
That's
too.
my own opinion.
I don't, but
Yeah, that's all good.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I bet we could also do one of those, and I didn't do it, and I'm not going to try to do it here. We could probably do one of those breakdowns, those doubter, believer kind of breakdowns.
I was thinking
Each
about
of
the
those
entire
characters
time watching.
is well constructed and varied.
They have their jobs, right?
They
Their
have their jobs.
archetypes.
Mhm.
Definitely. You got the full.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't write it down either, but that came to mind while I was watching. Everybody has their role. You've got this spiritual guy who
Billy.
Billy. So he's the believer,
Right.
right? And then because the entire time he's like, "There's something out there."
Yeah.
You know,
We're
and
gonna
then-
die.
Yeah. So they all do. I bet you if you break it down, they have
So
very specific archetypes.
When writers are coming up with these squad kind of movies, these team movies, give them jobs.
Yeah.
I mean, work on that. Make sure you know what their jobs are so they're not redundant. So you don't have 5 of the same guy just trying to top
Rogue
each
One.
other.
Yeah.
And this all
Yeah,
and this
It's
movie
it's
does
a terrible
a good job.
example of what you're saying.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
that's a good point.
In the character construction, I think this movie does a really good job of balancing out the humor, the different character sense of humor. You've got the spiritual guy who doesn't understand how to take a joke, and then you've got the guy who's doing nothing but jokes, and then like he everything's a joke, and then you've got Dutch who is amused by his own like one-lining, like I'm gonna say something dumb to annoy you, you know, and that's what gets him excited and laugh.
This is totally a script perspective too, but the 2 hardest characters in there, there's an odd little romance in the movie.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's crazy if you really look at it like that. But
Yeah.
it's like this
There's
little,
dramatic tension
between the 2
from
hardest
the moment,
characters.
Yeah.
From the moment they meet. Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
Jesse Ventura
Jesse
and Bill
Ventura,
Duke.
yeah,
The 2 of them have this weird little romance that plays out so beautifully, and
It
it's
is.
like, and they're easily the one's the most machismo, and the other one's the silent stoicism, and it's like, okay, there's this beautiful moment
It's
where he
true.
remembers him, and it's like,
Yeah.
Jesus.
Good
Yeah,
call.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's some degree that the self-awareness is built in a little bit, don't you guys? I
Well,
mean,
mostly with Arnold.
you think well, to have him in a movie, there's a bit of a
Yeah.
self-awareness
You know what's
too.
you know what's funny? I read this quote.
It knows it's Arnold.
I read that it was like an oral history of Predator or something. And somebody said, like, yeah, I was talking to Arnold and why he should do this movie, and he just did Commando. So my pitch to him was, well, this movie isn't going to be like Commando. Like Commando, you were a cartoon character. You started off carrying a tree, and that's something a human can't do. And I was like, to me, he was always the Commando character in this movie. Like, I don't necessarily think he's that much more grounded in this movie, and I don't have a problem with that.
I
I
don't
loved
either.
Commando, and I wanted
love
to see.
Commando.
I wanted
Yeah.
to see a better movie than you know what I mean. Like Commando's, I love, but I wanted to almost see. I was like, I saw the potential. Like if you threw, $10 more million at him or
Gotcha.
something.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't
don't
want
see it.
I wouldn't want Dutch to be as like outspoken and quippy as
Yeah, I guess there's
Commando.
He kind of has his moments though.
He
Yeah,
does,
he's
but
got
I
5
don't.
or
I don't
6.
want that.
I mean,
I like.
I think if
Stick
we're on the
around.
dial of character
I don't want.
tone,
I don't want stick around.
Yeah,
let off some steam. I don't want that.
I think if we're in the dial of tone, maybe he was up to an 8 and they pulled him back to a 7. You know, it's not huge. It's not a huge shift.
Yeah.
Like when I saw that quote, I was like, I don't know. I always saw him, but I know what you're saying. There are some cartoony kind of one-liners and stuff in that movie.
Yeah.
In Commando?
In Commando.
Yeah, that's almost the function of Commando.
That's what you remember.
Yeah, that's like the theme and moral of Commando.
It's,
Not that we'll ever do Commando, but that's probably the moral premise.
the funny thing, I saw Commando as a kid with my father, and I came out of it like saying, like loving all those one-liners and saying them. And my father was like, yeah, he's just doing that thing they do in James Bond. They've done that. They did that. James Bond did it better. You know, that was totally my dad's. And I never realized. And then I'd been watching those James Bond movies, and I was like, oh, yeah, I guess he does do that. You know,
yeah,
that's all
a
it
good
was.
Point.
That's all it was.
It
James
just carried
Bond.
it over.
It's odd
into
how
other-
people just want one thing to do with the one thing.
Yeah.
So,
it
well,
can't be done
since
in other
since we're
things.
talking about one-liners,
Yeah.
is there any way somebody can, like, if a writer is there and they wanted to write one-liners, is there any advice you can give to them? Is it possible?
So
I have two things.
let's hear Bob's.
Because I think I'm the
First-
least qualified to say
First,
this.
get
but-
Arnold to say all your dialogue.
Well, there's
That's
that.
right.
It's got to be one of two things, in my opinion. It has got to be either incredibly funny or witty.
Yeah.
Just one of those two things. It's got to be, or both, and it'll be immortal. But more importantly than that, it has to be at the right moment in the movie. It's a matter of execution for me more than it is writing sometimes.
Yeah.
I really think that the right moment,
Right place, right time.
right place, right time, the music swells, the hero says it, and then
It's usually an exclamation point.
And I,
Yeah.
I use the term one-liner, but I more meant how do you write
Quips.
quotable? Like how do you that stand the
well,
test
that's what
of
I'm
time?
saying. I think that
No,
stuff stands
you
out.
answered it. I just wanted to
Stuff stands
clarify.
out because the movie surrounding it sticks
Right.
in your crawl.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Sure, a line can stick out because of how well it's written, but
Yeah.
I feel like the movie can execute it.
Yeah, I wonder how many of the great quotable lines though.
Well, give me an example.
Well, I'll tell you like my thoughts
Go ahead.
on
Your
it.
thoughts.
Go for it.
So I started to put my finger on it when talking about the characters themselves in this movie.
Okay.
I think number one key is you have to have clearly defined, because all these one-liners are usually sort of the character knows they're being clever when they're saying it.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like every single one-liner, when you think about it, is said with kind of like a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor, even in the scary moments, you know, like maybe not get away from her, you bitch, but
Right.
most of these,
It's Last Action Hero, but for that's the whole movie.
yeah, get
That-
away from
pretty
her,
much,
you bitch.
right.
So
Which is John McTiernan too. Just want to
I
point that
think
out.
you have to have a clearly defined voice,
Mhm.
because it usually always matches up with that character. Like if a character is saying a one-liner and it doesn't match up with the person whose voice is coming out of their mouth, I think like that's the number one key. If it's something that person would say, do you know what I mean? So it's like if you can make the character so consistent in the way they say things, and like that opens up the possibility to be able to do that.
Let me help
Yeah.
you and word it. If it's profound to the character.
That's a good.
It
way to
needs the
put it.
character can't just be hollowly saying things. It needs to be profound to their
Right.
story, or even better to the audience as a whole.
It needs to
Right?
sound
Yeah.
like it's coming from the character and not the writer.
We did adaptation on the show. You not what you you are what you love, not what loves you.
Right.
Yeah.
It's profound to the character. It works in real life.
Yeah.
It's quotable. It's easily said.
Right.
It almost rhymes. It's symmetrical.
It's somehow
you know?
plausible, and then
Yeah.
when they're bad, they're not plausible.
Right,
Right.
right.
It's like most all one-liners, nobody would ever say them, but the ones that make you roll your eyes are the ones that like no one would ever say them, and it doesn't work in this situation. You know, like we've all watched movies where we're like,
what is
fuck.
a good play on that is a hobo with a shotgun, where it's like when life gives you lemons, you make a baseball bat covered in razor blades.
Right.
You know, like
That's awesome.
right.
I don't know. It's a good question.
There's some
Yeah.
magic to it. I think that might not be
There's some
math.
luck.
Not
'cause
teachable.
I don't know if it's
If you think a
teachable.
lot of the quotable ones from this, I think they break down to two things. One is Arnold is saying things and he doesn't quite pronounce it right.
Yeah.
So
Chop
get to the
Sounds
chopper.
funny.
You know, so
Get to the
just,
top up.
it's more silly.
Which is a perfunctory. It's just functional that he
Yeah.
says that.
Yeah.
It's not a good quote.
But I wouldn't call
Yeah.
that a one-liner. It's just
No, well, again,
yeah,
that's why it's quotable.
Quotable.
And then the other ones
If it
are
bleeds.
things like, if it bleeds, we can kill it or whatever.
But that goes right with the machismo of that character.
Right.
He's
Or-
so
It
badass.
fits.
I ain't
him.
got time to bleed.
I ain't got
is
time to
another
bleed.
Yeah,
very
that's
quotable.
great.
Both about blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the blood ones. So that's it. If you're writing quotable, just talk about blood.
Blood, yeah.
No, that's a good. This
Luke,
movie
I am
does
your
have
blood
a
father.
lot of quotable lines.
It,
It's,
it, it has,
Dylan, you son of a bitch.
I think
to
but
pushing too many pencils.
everybody in this movie does have a clearly defined
you ugly
voice.
motherfucker.
Right.
You one ugly motherfucker. Yeah, all that kind of stuff.
I don't think that you can. I think that first you kind of need the movie needs to be iconic for the lines to last.
And we posed this
Throughout
question.
the lexicon of
Yeah, that's
fandom. If Predator was a flop, I don't think people would be saying if it bleeds.
to people listening. We posed this question as something we didn't know the answer
we
to.
actually thought it was almost silly
I
to
like
try.
when we don't know the answers. I think that's more
But
interesting.
I think the answer to it is, like you said, the movie has to be iconic for it to really be quotable. Otherwise, it'll be or it has to be
Who's
great.
Remember that line from that movie no one's seen?
Yeah. So if you exactly.
Do you ever hear anybody quote Mac and Me? No, like, no, it's not happening.
That's a new thing. I'm gonna have to just start coming up with quotes
Mac
from these
and Me
movies.
Movies that people
one-liners.
don't like and are never.
Make it really awkward when they don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I think the movie has to be great. It has to timing. It's just what makes a great line.
Yeah.
Ultimately, and if all else fails, make an okay movie and have Arnold mispronounce it.
I mean, there's
That's basically-
Jingle All the Way, not a beloved
Yeah.
movie. I love it, but
It's fun.
everything he says is a quote because he's Arnold Schwarzenegger trying to be funny, and that's a quote.
And then
Put that cookie down.
and then,
It's like,
and then I think people kind of latched on to the fact that if he was angry and yelling, it was funny. Like, it's not a tumor.
Yeah,
And I think the writers actually kind of knew what they were doing in that.
So you're
in
saying
sense.
that Get to the Choppa led to all those other.
I think so.
You think that kind
If
of.
I was writing for him, I would be like, Arnold's funny when he's like really upset and he's yelling things, and I would make him do that. And then even Get to the Choppa becomes funny.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I'm sure Twins has its share of like Arnold's exasperate. Well, Twins is a bad example because he's so mellow.
He's a different character
Yeah.
in that. Yeah.
Do you think everyone on set
I'm trying
during
to.
the
What was the other
intense...
comedy he did?
I didn't mean to
Junior.
interrupt you.
Junior. That's maybe that.
Yeah.
Which is playing off of his machismo.
Yeah.
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 'Cause
That's the better example.
When he's singing on the plane, taking
Yeah.
out the papers, and it's just,
Yeah.
I love it.
That's a good
Um,
question, though, Jamie. Like, I'm gonna have to say, as far as the quotable dialogue, I think it's a little bit more magic than it is math. That's my opinion.
I think
I don't know. Yeah.
I agree. When
It's teachable.
I've never
Yeah.
once sat around trying to say I need a quotable
How
line.
How
here."
do I write a quotable line?
Right.
And
Yeah.
honestly, when I come up with a clever line, it's probably 50% of the time it's a groaner, and 50% of the time it's thought of as clever.
Yeah.
And I can never tell because to me it's always clever. So half the time I'm writing groaners, and I think they're clever. And to some people they are clever, and some people like the groaners.
I like the term groaner. I'm going to use
Yeah,
that
so-
for my own stuff.
So if you
Oh,
wrote
it's
it,
the
but
groaner, Jamie.
if I wrote a groaner for Arnold, it would be awesome. 'Cause
Well,
it'd be funny.
once again, that's what Last Action Hero did. You want to be a farmer. Here's a couple of acres, and he kicks the guy in the face. Like that's exactly what that was doing. You're right. Yeah. Well, let's talk about setups and payoffs now,
Okay.
because I want to get I feel like we haven't gotten to like
to
the actual
writing
structure or meat of the
mechanics.
movie. It's wonderful because Predator gave us all these outside topics to
know.
discuss.
Well, I think what's cool about Predator is the fact that it is a simple story, and that's why
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah.
to do the log line. I know early in my writing career, I was always overcomplicating stuff. I came off of like The Usual Suspects. Like that's
Yep.
I was trying to write The Usual Suspects.
That probably ruined screenplays for like 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm sure it ruined my.
If-
I'd be writing a Fairly Brothers style comedy and try to turn it into The Usual Suspects. I always thought, I thought every
if you
few
just
minutes
throw Kaiser Soze in at the
there
end,
has to be a twist at the midpoint and a twist.
Yeah.
But this movie doesn't have. It basically sets up what it's going to be. It's
Yeah.
methodically goes through it.
Yeah.
It gets to the end. It delivers, and the end.
Like
So-
you said, you wrote the drip feed.
that was actually
that was
yeah,
this guy.
that was dude.
that was me.
Excellent, Bob.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Oh, thanks.
So
What did I write exactly here? Because I wrote something.
how to properly drip feed
Mm-hmm.
the information?
Oh yeah, because I felt one of the great when I'm re-examining a movie I've seen 1,000 times. this movie withholds information about what's happening really well.
Yeah.
To keep us with...
Not in a frustrating way,
but it does it just enough to keep us with the characters, so we're not going, oh, well, this is ridiculous. I've lost... I don't care. Like, the Predator's doing all this stuff. I don't even understand. But it gives us just enough. It shows us the perspective of the Predator just enough.
Right.
That we stay with it.
Right.
So
it's just like Jaws in that way.
It is.
That
Well,
manner.
the movie tells us with the way it jumps back and forth between the Predator that when he says if it bleeds, we can kill it. We know that this thing is not immortal.
Right.
I think as the audience before they say that.
Yeah.
Like, we know it is still just a being.
We see it bleeding before they do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which is really important.
I think so too.
Otherwise, if we thought this thing was this immortal, invisible killing machine, would this really be fun to watch?
Yeah.
And while
then you know that there's a goal that they can achieve.
Yeah.
While it plays
but
with,
dissemination of information is important here.
while it plays with POV in a very horror movie kind of way, like the Michael Myers through the eyes stalking perspective. It generally reveals its technology and kill techniques through the characters. So we're very much in the character's shoes. It does have those stalking moments. I think it's trying to create dread because it's a bit of a slow burn.
Plus it has the vision too, which adds to the whole thing.
The vision,
so it's
and that's a great
weird.
setup.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we know a little bit that it's got the superior position and it's stalking, but they learn as we learn as they learn.
Yeah.
So I think that's what that ultimately is the easiest way and sometimes the best way to disseminate exposition is just have the characters learn things that they need to know when they need to know it, and the audience also will learn those things.
It's the fish out of water in the situation. Right. Like how they are essentially fishes out of water in this situation.
I think
being hunted by a mysterious invisible force in the jungle.
That's something I wish I heard years ago. You know what I mean? Like it's something that I never found to be like on the surface of writing or movies or anything, like audience versus characters and what like where do you keep that balance, and how you keep that balance depends on what kind of a sadistic bastard you are as far as a filmmaker or writer, you know what I mean?
I think if you're struggling to write your first couple screenplays, or you've written a couple and they didn't come out the way you wanted to, I think trying to find a story that allows you to tell the story that way for one of your early screenplays is very useful.
You mean in that we know as much as the characters.
We know, we learn when they learn. We're totally in their footsteps. It's not the only way to write a movie, obviously, but I think early on you can learn a lot from telling that kind of story.
A good example of something we've done on this podcast would be probably like Quiet Place, where we're with the main characters the whole time. We never the villains, they're off. We never see them. We're not with them.
Yeah.
This actually gives us more about the villain. Predator does. We know, we see him in his own little corner.
The only thing I'd say about A Quiet Place, and I do think that's a good example, is Quiet Place, they do have a lot of world information that we don't know.
That's true.
If you can find a place where somebody is dropped into a new place, that's even better.
That's what it is. You have your character who's asking questions, literally asking questions.
In this movie, she functions as that a little bit because she gives them kind of context.
Yep.
Yeah.
And usually she's almost like the half-man character.
She's like a half-man, exactly, because she survived them. And then some of the characters, the guy who shaves his face the whole time, what's his name? I can't remember his name. After he survives,
the African American guy that's been in a million
that's got a shaved head and shaves his face.
Yeah.
He's like 80 now.
He's in Mandy.
He was in Mandy. Right. Yeah,
that's right.
He's working still.
He becomes a half man because he survives the encounter, and he's like, I saw it. And he talks about the eyes and the things. He starts kind of being almost Quint-like. I saw it. It survived all this gunpowder that I put in its face, But I agree with you completely, Jamie. A lesser version of this story would, in the very first scene when they start getting killed, you'd learn it bleeds. You learn all the weapons. It would be dumped on you all at once in this fucking crazy over the top info dump, and then you'd be like, okay, what do we do now?
So now it's just a fight,
right?
Now it's a fight. It's not. There's no mystery to it.
Slowly, you learn one thing, then you learn another, then you learn another, until we finally start catching up.
You have to believe Billy when he says we're all gonna die. That's what makes this movie work. When he says that, Dutch believes it, and the audience should believe. Even though I know Schwarzenegger can't die, I kind of feel like he might die.
Yeah.
You need to feel that, or else
They're
it doesn't work.
they're definitely outmatched in the beginning.
Yeah.
They're fighting
Yeah.
a ghost.
Yeah.
essentially.
But that midpoint though, like he's ripping people's spines out. You should be like, oh, well, this is just we're watching people get murdered.
Yeah, there's
Dutch has to overcome literally everything possible.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah.
But what I wrote here too is I thought that each death kind of serves a purpose to the character too. Don't you think?
That's
I
a
mean,
good
like
call.
I think like Carl Weathers' death, the way he dies, the way it's even executed too. But his death seems he's trying to like atone for his sin,
Yeah.
and he dies horribly.
He's like he
could've
instead of
lived.
running away,
He could've lived.
turns and chooses
Right.
to be honorable.
Billy
respectful, yes.
dies in a way that his character could only see fit,
Yeah.
which is honorably facing
Yeah.
head on,
Taking off all of his
right.
Yeah,
'Cause
becoming one with nature.
man versus nature. He's just
Yeah.
like, that's it. I have
Yeah.
nothing else left.
Yeah.
Bill Duke dies going revenge for the love of his life, which
Yeah.
is Jesse Ventura.
Yeah.
So yeah,
yeah.
I mean, they're
have a
all-
score to settle.
there's no
Yeah.
death that's just kind of thrown away.
I think
You know?
that's really what is almost surprising about this movie. A movie that started as Rocky Five. Is that really it is a team movie, and
Yeah.
each of those characters get their moments. Unlike maybe like in Aliens, I as much as I love Aliens, there might be a little bit of a body count element.
I don't like you said, the team doesn't stand out as hard for me. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe 2 or 3 members outside of the main characters, but
Yeah, it's almost like they have to rip through the team quickly in order to get to the main event.
there were some red shirts in there.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
yeah.
There's
Yeah.
even some elements of this movie, like Carl Weathers reminds me of Paul Reiser a little bit in this movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's-
right.
Except he has a much
Paul Reiser's unforgivable. He never atones.
But-
Where I feel
and-
like Carl Weathers knows by the end of the movie, I did this.
and
Their lives are on my line, and then we see him get his comeuppance.
and he
really.
feels guilty not only for getting them into it, but about the guys who got their skin stripped in the beginning. I forget what that guy's name is. Hodgins or Hodgins.
Hodgkins or
Ho-
something.
yeah,
He's a
because-
disease.
Yeah.
Because
Not a cure.
Yeah,
because
right.
when the one guy says, "I have a score to settle for Jesse Ventura's death," he says, "I do too for Hodgins." So
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh man, he's got a goal, that's independent
yeah.
from survival." Yeah. And I thought that was like an extra cherry on top to this little team.
No,
you
it's
know?
it's like
Yeah.
a B story that's
Yeah.
like it doesn't overtake the movie.
It makes it even more
and
interesting.
it's somehow
Yeah.
it's like it's so
because you
it's just
care-
enough.
It makes you care about their deaths. Yeah.
Yeah, I care when Bill Duke dies,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
barely does anything in the
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah.
He shoots the awesome gun, and then he misses his friend, who we have no backstory on, but because of like a few lines of dialogue, we know that they've had this incredible
Yeah.
military past together.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
lovers.
Yeah.
They
He
might-
said he was my friend.
You know what? I mean, maybe
Maybe,
man.
who
I
knows?
don't
You
like.
never know.
I don't. Now I watched. I'm like,
Well,
maybe they were
in
lovers.
my fan fiction. That I read.
Dude,
Predator
please
fan
write
fiction,
that.
Yes.
My shipper
please
fiction.
write it.
One thing I don't think we wrote it on the thing, but I think this movie has a great before world. It's a great example of the before world, upside down world, new world. So
Explain that. A little
okay,
bit.
so it's not. I'm not a stickler for 3-act structure, but I do like that, looking at a storytelling as a before world, before like the act one,
The inciting
being-
incident.
yeah, before, yeah, and then the upside down world is like all of a sudden everything is kind of like fucking shit has hit the fan, and you're dealing with the characters are dealing with things they would have never dealt with before.
Right.
And then the new world is now that they've dealt with all of these things that they've never would have dealt with before. They've
Mhm.
learned things, and they're gonna attack the situation differently in order to succeed at the goal. So like, but it's so visual. Like in the before world, they are the ones who are like tearing apart villages, like the ultimate weapons. Like they fucking like show up at that village, and they are the predators.
They're a group of Rambos.
Right? They do
yeah.
exactly to this village what the predator does to them, like effortlessly. They just kick everybody's ass. They look like people who have never been challenged, and like
They've always won.
they are superior, right?
Mhm.
The upside down world shows them experiencing all the things that they have put upon to other people, and for once not being able to handle themselves, right? And being picked off one by one. But then you also see the great the predator is camouflaged.
It's almost
Basically,
like, so you're almost saying like it's like sin, and then reversal of sin.
yeah, and then in the new world, like the roles are the Predator and Arnold's roles are so completely reversed. I didn't notice this in like thinking about it as a storyteller in the past, and then rewatching it after I've been like consulting on scripts for 3 years. I was like, damn, this is so well constructed. Arnold becomes the one who is camouflaged, and the Predator is not. Right. Arnold is the one who is using weapons, and the Predator is not. Arnold is the one who is in the trees superior, and the Predator is not. Their roles are like so completely reversed for the entire third act that the Predator is basically becoming the Arnold's militia role.
Well, I mean, the title is supposed to be like a
no,
double
I know,
title,
but
obviously.
like it's so visually well constructed.
Right,
he does all the exact same things that the Predator did to him in his own way. It's like I was like, whoa, camouflage,
set up traps.
Yeah, and he's like living in the trees. Like
there's a term for that. It's like I think it usually goes thesis, antithesis, synthesis. You might have said that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah,
put that in the bank of our terms.
It's
one of those common.
Yeah, it's a common. Yeah, this is a great example of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Yep. Like, and it's so simple.
Yeah,
it's simple.
It's so simple. It like almost goes right under your eyes.
That's what I mean. It resonates because it's so simple, and I never realized it before. I was
the camouflage reversal thing and the weapons and traps. I didn't even realize that until like 10 years ago, and I've been watching the movie. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, oh, now he's the Predator.
He's the Predator.
The movie, right? Yeah, it never like struck me in that until I thought about it for even a second.
But that's in the construction. Those guys.
But it's so well done.
That's what I mean. Those guys are like, we're gonna make the third act. He's gonna be the Predator, and the Predator's gonna be him.
And honestly, watching movies like this, these are things that writers need to be concerned about. But watching a movie like this, I was probably so scared, thrilled, blah, 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 that I didn't care about any of that.
That's what I mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's working on an unconscious level.
It probably could work even if it was not as well constructed. But it is. I'm not saying it's not.
Tools like this help the writer construct these stories.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So when you're staring at a blank page and you don't know what to do, these things, what do I do in the third act? Well, I could just have them throw rocks at him and kill him, or, whatever. But no, they went back to the beginning. They kind of mirrored the narrative. They folded it back in on itself. You see this constantly in screenwriting. I've even seen people. I saw. I think it's that book I've mentioned many times. My screenplay can beat up your story. Yeah. He has a method in his. This is totally different than that. Where he says, if you don't know what to do at the midpoint, just start repeating like the beats from the beginning in different ways. And he uses like Star Wars as an example.
Do you just reverse it?
Yeah, it kind of like upping it or amplifying it or doing a mirror image of it. So he writes, he gives an example of Star Wars, like maybe the beginning of Star Wars is a spaceship fleeing another spaceship, and then maybe the middle of Star Wars is a spaceship getting pulled into a bigger spaceship.
Yeah.
And he kind of goes through the whole thing process like that. Not saying you have to do this, but these are tools to help you figure out the blank page. Maybe when you're in your outline phase, you use this thing and then you throw it out later on, or you come up with something better or something, whatever.
Yeah.
But these are all tools that can be helpful. And I think it's obvious from this one.
Yeah. Like he had to become on the same level with the villain in order to achieve his goal of survival.
It's interesting. Right before we did this podcast, like not the second before, Save the Cat did a beat sheet for Predator.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
really?
No.
And I hadn't looked at it till now. I just brought it up while we were talking because I wanted to see what their theme.
That's amazing. Yeah. Okay.
I wanted to see what their theme stated was. And anyway, if you want to take a look at this, they do a whole Save the Cat 3-act structure. Their theme stated, and I'd really have to dig in to think this is, but it's really about. Okay, so he quotes Dylan. He says, "There's no such thing, old buddy. It's a one-way ticket. Once we cross that border, we're on our own." Why? Because this story is really about the final bout with Arnie versus the Predator. Dutch works with his team, but through this ordeal, he will have to learn the lesson of working alone without his men or equipment.
Working alone.
That's
I don't think
not
so.
what the movie's about.
Yeah, he seems pretty capable.
Like,
I
that
think.
happens in the movie,
Yeah.
but that is not the theme.
I'm
but-
going to
but-
disagree
by
with
the way,
Save the Cat, and I'm a
yeah.
fan
By the way,
of Save the Cat.
I always say this about Save the Cat and anything else. And just like us when we talk about these things are in the eye of the beholder. This isn't necessarily what the writer is looking
Right.
for. So, sometimes the theme's
There's no
stated.
right
If you can't
answer.
figure it out, you
okay.
take a wild guess.
That theme sounds like it's from someone who doesn't like the movie very much, which that could affect how you write the log line.
Yeah,
or how
no,
you,
definitely. How
you
you,
know what I mean?
interpret the
Like-
material, 100%. Yeah. No.
It could also.
If I wasn't that into this movie, I'd probably be like, well, he did learn how to do it by himself.
Yeah.
You know, that's the lesson that I got from. It just doesn't. Like, sure he did, but that's
The breakdown, though, I will say, theme stated is always the hardest part of these breakdowns.
Definitely.
And whenever I read them, whether it's on SaveTheCat.com or somewhere else, a lot of times I disagree with
I
them.
agree with
And,
you.
and if you listen to me when I talk about theme, I always try to come from a very humble place. Like, I have no idea if this is right, but I'm going to give it my best. It's just my opinion. And that's the problem with theme when you start dabbling and guessing what it is you can be wrong almost 90% of the time. So
when I'm using when I'm reading a client script, I will give them quotes just like that.
yes.
And I will say, here are the various thematic elements I see you
Exactly.
talking about.
Exactly.
I'm not sure what you're
That's-
saying, but here's examples of how you're using
That-
that.
That's why usually when I try to analyze them, I just start picking off all the pieces and then I try to see if they somehow can be meshed together. But the meshing together is all me. It's not the writer.
It's not
That's
the writer.
problem.
Exactly.
But
And
the
it's
writer
like,
has to mesh this.
yeah.
together.
So you present it to them. Is this what you're going for? This is what I see
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
after I've read it, and based on the end events, because I always look at the climax. That's why I said him holding the rock over the predator. What does that say?
Right.
That says he
Right.
respects him. So for me, it's about respecting your enemies. But
also that he's not a killer.
at heart, yeah.
He's not. It's
Good
his
call. Survival. But anyway,
His sin-
yeah, theme
his-
is hard, man.
his
Theme
sin
is hard.
is the predator probably does.
This movie was not made to have a profound thematic
the-
statement when you leave.
Theme is hard.
You could
Reverse
put-
engineering the theme is hard as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
You could dig about 100 out of 100
Yeah.
different themes out of it. It probably and it works with most of them, honestly.
Yeah.
At something this simple,
Yeah.
that's why it's great, though.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do we got anything else to say on
I
Predator?
don't think so. What did you learn, Jimmy?
I learned that you can basically find many themes in even the simplest of action horror movies. Yeah, and you might not be right.
Jamie?
I think this one is the perfect example of try to find simple stories well told. Don't do what I did and spend all your time thinking complicated stories or twists and turns are the key to a great story. A great story could be the simplest of stories that you just milk for everything that's worth.
Yeah.
So keep it simple. Keep it simple.
I think if I got anything from Predator and this podcast too, it would be make all the characters matter.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
the reason I do love this movie is because I like all the team members.
Yep.
Even in the smallest roles. They
And
all
you
matter.
care when they die.
I care when they die. They are not there just for show. They're not a bunch of Rambos without names, and that's important. I think that's what kind of makes this movie great, as opposed to all the other production reasons we could say and McTiernan and all that.
From a
But
writing standpoint.
from a writing
though.
standpoint, they all
Yeah.
matter to me, and I
Yeah.
like them. And I like their tiny little beelines.
Yeah.
You know.
BCD, I dig it.
Yeah. Right. BCDs. Yeah. Anything else, guys?
It's an awesome movie.
Yep.
I don't think anyone's gonna disagree anyway. That's
All
it.
right,
All
Thanks
right.
for listening, guys.
Predator. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You have just listened to Writers Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring two professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.